Welcome to Retail's Most Wanted, we're the podcast that examines the latest issues related to organized retail crime and how retailers and policymakers are fighting back against today's organized crime syndicates. This is Dave Studdard. I'm Marty Carpenter, and coming up on today's show, Dave, we're going to be joined by David Iorillo of the San Diego Organized Retail Crime Alliance. It's one of the longest-standing public-private ORC coalitions. We'll get into that right after this word from our sponsors. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with the Attorney General Alliance, where U.S. State Attorneys General collaborate on emerging legal issues and the rule of law at home and across borders. Learn more at agalliance.com. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with LVT, securing physical environments through intelligent automation. Learn more at lvt.com. That's lvt.com. David Iorillo is the supervising criminal investigator with the San Diego District Attorney's Office, where he oversees the Economic Crimes Division. He's also a founder and board member of the San Diego Organized Retail Crime Alliance, a leading network fostering collaboration between law enforcement and private sector partners to combat ORC. With over 16 years of commitment to the Alliance, David has been instrumental in enhancing both short-term investigations and long-term outcomes. David, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. First of all, can you tell us about how the San Diego Organized Retail Crime Alliance was formed and some of the initial challenges you faced?
Sure. It sort of came out of necessity. Back in 2008, I was working as a general detective out of Central Division downtown in San Diego for San Diego PD. And I had a series of shoplifting cases that came reassigned to me. And, it was my first introduction to what I learned to be organized retail crime. Up to that point, I just assumed shoplifting was shoplifting. It was someone stealing for, the occasional, date or something like that. So I had no real idea of what ORC was. And so I got these cases, and we used some of the local county databases that I had to kind of dig into it and learn that there were many more cases like this. And the best way to do it was to kind of reach out to the detectives, the old school kind of policing of, let's reach out to the detective at Escondido PD or to National City PD. And so we sat down and we had kind of an informal task force approach to working these cases. And I can't remember who it was. It was probably Mike Martinez from Escondido PD who said, hey, let's reach out to the retailers and see what they had. And so we started working this one case in this kind of collaborative task force approach. And we brought in people from the different retailers that were being victimized. And it started off as, just focusing primarily on this one case. And over the course of about maybe 6 or 8 months, we were really effective. We were able to share information. Sometimes when you're working an investigation, you have a little bit of information for that one case. And getting the opportunity to speak to other people involved really helps to kind of formalize the different puzzle pieces that you have for your case. So we're working this one case, which we ultimately called the A-Team because they were the A-Team in the county stealing a bunch of stuff. And what we started to do was we said, hey, you know what? These retailers are coming to us with other cases outside of this. Hey, is there a need for an opportunity to sit down and have conversations with other retailers? And so we started having the same kind of informal meetings that we were having just on that one case. And we invited, say a particular mall was being victimized. We said, let's reach out to the mall management, reach out to mall security management. Let's pull in all the retailers and LP people who are involved in that mall because they're being victimized heavily. And then we started having these really larger and larger meetings. So it went from, the 6 or 7 or 8 of us on that one case to pretty quickly about 20 or 30 people meeting every other month, trying to have a meeting of what was going on. And as we kind of formulated this, informal thing and worked that case, we decided that we were going to make it a little more formal and have some structure to it because there was such a big need for it here in San Diego.
Yeah. If some people call us the A-Team, but I think that's because you look like Mr. T.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see it. David, you mentioned that the Alliance began in 2008. Talk to us for a second and a little bit about how the Alliance has evolved. So much has changed with organized retail crime from 2008 till now. How has the Alliance evolved in that same space?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it a little bit before. It started off as there's always a challenge with an alliance in making sure you have enough buy-in from stakeholders and enough buy-in from organizations. So not only are you looking at having a strong partnership with the retailers and getting them to, the management to allow them to not just be a part of an organization, but to contribute to it. And contributing could be something as simple as, putting out bolos or providing case information. And sometimes retailers are hesitant to do that for any number of reasons. And the same thing is for law enforcement. For me, as a detective at the time, I had to basically get my bosses to buy in on it. First it was my sergeant, and then it was my lieutenant, and then it's like, oh, let's get the deputy chief involved and have them participate. And so the alliance has evolved in the same way I think our approach to organized retail crime has evolved. Because again, it was my introduction to ORC at the time, and frankly, most law enforcement back then didn't really understand the depth of what ORC really involved and all the different facets dealing with cargo theft or return fraud and straight shoplifting as a means of committing crime. And so it was a challenge for us to get people to buy in on it. But once we did, and we started having these meetings, what happened was the alliance started being productive in the sense that we started having cases that were developed from these meetings or being prosecuted out of the sharing of information in these meetings. And so from that, it decided, hey, my chief at the time at San Diego PD was on board with it. And they said, hey, do we have to do to make this functional? And so I was able to find an attorney and a law firm that would do it pro bono. And they actually made it into a 501c3 organization. We were one of the first orcas, I believe, that was a 501c3. And from there, we started getting some traction. We did an interview for a congressional study that we were doing on ORC. And then we started getting invited to, say, NRF. So we went to NRF when they were in Los Angeles, and we presented a little bit. And I think by presenting and identifying what these alliances were in kind of the infancy of these back in 2008, it was definitely a progression that helped us evolve from, just a couple of detectives and LP guys meeting on our particular case needs and expanding it out to how do we address ORC stuff, not just in San Diego County, but also regionally within the state and whatnot.
You mentioned the people that you've engaged with and involving shareholders and getting buy-off. I'm curious, how has the involvement of loss prevention and security professionals enhanced that investigation and the outcomes of those investigations?
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of collaborating with loss prevention people in the private sector. I think that all these cases that we work in ORC are only effective and only well done if we have a buy-in from both sides. So I think it's important to understand that the LE, the law enforcement, have a role. We have our limited things that we can do, and LP has some limitations on what they can do. And finding that way to collaborate between the two partnerships is really important because, and it starts with making sure that my LE partners that I've worked with over the years, and I have almost 20 years of doing it with the LP guys, making sure that they understand, hey, look, LP and security professionals are just that. They're professionals. They're dedicated. They're hardworking. They're in my mind, they're the boots on the ground. They're the first responders to any of these ORC incidents. And if you don't have a respect for their professionalism, because they are professionals, then the challenge is you can't have a partnership. And if you can't have a partnership, you can't have an effective alliance, and these cases, don't work out. And being able to communicate effectively with the LP partners and helping them maybe guide them, hey, these are the things we need for an effective prosecution. These are the things that we need for effective restitution down the line when your case does get prosecuted and you do get a resolution. How can we best get the restitution you need for your organization? How do we get the product back to you? How do we recoup the money that you've lost? And I think that's why I think LP people are so important certainly for an alliance, but definitely for law enforcement investigations.
I love that. Collaboration is everything. As we watch the ORC issue grow, it really takes the village, right? And that collaboration is a big deal. I want to talk for a second about the impact that the Alliance has had on, really, what is that impact on reducing organized retail crime in San Diego?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's really important because I firmly believe. I mean, I know there have been lots of workers that have ORC organizations, alliances that have opened up, and I think the thing that makes an effective Orca effective is what the approach is. What is the mentality behind the Orca? And for us here in San Diego, we've always been about the membership, and we've always been about how can we further the membership's investigations, because ultimately, we're all trying to figure out the way to resolve these issues. And so I think the impact that our Orca or any alliance has is uh, having membership meetings. So we have monthly meetings, we have annual training conferences that we provide to our membership. Our membership is free. So if you want to join SD Orca, it doesn't cost anybody any money, whether you're loss prevention, prosecution, private security, or law enforcement. At the same time, we have an annual conference. Last year we had 400 attendees. It does not cost anything to attend our conferences because we feel that it's so important to have these opportunities to meet, to discuss cases, to discuss trends that are going on, to discuss the concerns that LP have. At these meetings, every month that we have a meeting, we get together and LP will come and say, hey, we have this issue communicating with this law enforcement partner. Can you help facilitate that communication? Hey, we're having a problem maybe getting some prosecution done in another county. Can you maybe get our DVA, Anna Wynn, who's assigned to these cases, to facilitate a communication aspect of, reaching out to another agency? And so I think these things are really important, and the alliances have an impact on how we can affect cases and how we can help LP get their cases resolved, and how we can, as law enforcement, how we can get people to prosecute cases. And ultimately, our goal is to prosecute a case in the most fair way as possible, at the same time making, a sense of restitution or justice for the retailers and victims involved.
David, you talk about all the tools that you have in the alliance. I'm curious, and this is me coming from the technology space myself as a technology solutions provider. How are you guys using technology, and how is that playing a role really in the efforts to combat all of the organized retail crime that you're seeing?
Yeah, technology plays a big role in it, especially nowadays. We were one of the first to adopt a dedicated website. So the SD Orca organization has a website, and once you're a member, you can join. And joining the website is a way for you to share information, but also to get information. So, like I said earlier, these cases are made on the collaborative nature of communicating between partners. So if you're a victim, if you're a retailer who's a victim, and you create a BOLO, a wanted poster, you have a case you're working, you can submit that and upload it directly into SD Worker, which is a secure database. You only have access to it if you're a member. And you're able to, that stuff is populated onto a map. So you can geolocate cases that are going on in a particular region. It's tracked by suspect information. It's tracked by type of crime. So if it's a shoplift, or if it's a fentanyl location, or if it's, say, a burglary or a robbery of some type, all those things are tracked, and you can catalog those and look at them, so you can kind of get some statistics if you want to go back to your agency or your organization, say, hey, these are the cases going on. I need to increase my workflow, whatever it might be. So the technology is there for that. We also have the ability to send alerts real time through the app, and we send email alerts, and that's how we kind of foster the meetings. But one of the things that we do with SD Orca that we use technology for is the monthly blitzes that we do. So we'll do we call blitz. Okay, and basically a blitz is we have a meeting, and then during the meeting we will facilitate, or prior to, but after the meeting we'll say, hey, we're having a lot of activity going on in this particular mall or this particular region. And we'll pick a place that we will all bring the resources together from SD Orca and do coordinated surveillance and prosecution activities and enforcement activities at a particular location. And that has been instrumental in the effectiveness of the alliance. How we use technology is we'll use apps like Zelle and communicate directly to that, because there's always going to be sometimes there's a communication line between law enforcement and loss prevention. So by having Zelle groups or chat groups, we'll use that technology real time to communicate. And that's been really effective. And we're working on partnering with some of the vendors that are out there now on integrating things like LPRs or body-worn cameras as they become um, more common in the civilian side. I see a lot of LP guys using them, and we would like to try and figure out a way to kind of work with them to, when we do these blitzes, to collaborate with them as well.
Are there any specific laws or policies you believe need to be changed or implemented to better address organized retail crime? Because sometimes a big part of the effort is changing the rules of the game to make sure you win.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time in ORC, so it's changed a lot. Back, in 2007, 8, 9, we had tools in our arsenal that we could use as law enforcement and prosecutors that we could charge more effectively, I think, at the time. Just one quick example would be if you did a misdemeanor shoplift and you had a prior arrest for a misdemeanor shoplift with an incarceration, we could charge that misdemeanor as a felony. Okay, that was a great tool that we had back then because, folks are smart. They understand that what's the limitations. Hey, it's at the time it's $400, now it's $950 in California. So hey, we'll only steal misdemeanor level thefts or only commit theft that would be minor. Back then, we could aggregate cases into felony level cases, or if you had a prior, that kind of thing. What's happened now is, unfortunately, in California, there was kind of a transition away from that, and shoplifting was kind of deprioritized, but it's become more mainstream. Thankfully, the DA, Summer Stephan here in San Diego, and other DAs across the state and the governor are working on legislation and laws to help kind of reduce the impact of ORC. So one of the laws that we have here in California is 487 parentheses E, which now will allow us to go back and aggregate these cases that we were, for a period of time, we were not allowed to do. Now we can again. So that's a big change. I would like to see some legislation directly focused on shoplifting and prioritizing that as a crime and understanding what ORC is and kind of prioritizing ORC. There's no real legislation or laws in the book for that. So we kind of have to find the laws that we can apply to it at a prosecutor level, like identity theft or, a conspiracy. It would be really helpful, especially in California, which is hit with, a large amount of ORC, if we can have specific laws tailored to organized retail crime and the different nuances of that, as opposed to someone stealing for a specific need, food or something like that.
David, ORC is one of those terms that got a lot of traction in the last 3-5 years in the mainstream media. Before that, it was relatively unknown. You guys have been at this since 2008. Congratulations. You were early on in fighting this very, very important cause. But curious, what advice you would give to other communities looking to establish similar alliances that combat organized retail crime?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the most important ones to ask, because the only way having done this for a while, I have a little bit of experience. I think that the most successful orcas, the alliances that effectively bring the public and private together, like we like to bridge that gap, is by having the right stakeholders involved and having a variety of them. When we created SDE Orca and now we have, we developed bylaws and articles of incorporation. We made this organization a very formal organization so that people can have, it lends validity and legitimacy to the organization and what we're doing. But at the same time, it's easier to get a buy-in from your organization or your law enforcement partners, because it's not just a group of people meeting like we were in the infancy of orcas. Now, all orcas have to start somewhere, and I'm not saying don't start having these informal meetings, but formalizing things, making it legitimate, validating things as best you can is the best approach, I think. And another thing I think is you have to have, like I was just saying a second ago, was you have to have a strong variety, I think, of law enforcement and LP partners. Sometimes I've seen orcas where you have maybe one law enforcement agency that's kind of running the whole thing, or you have one retailer that's kind of running the whole thing. And I think that the problem with that is people get promoted, people get transferred, people get lose interest in things. And so you really have to find those key stakeholders who are willing to partner long-term and understand, hey, look, this is a commitment to this. You just can't do it for 6 months and then transfer out to a different assignment and expect something like an orca to really exist, because it really takes a lot of work. I mean, it's none of the board members have ever been paid. We don't receive any money to it. It's a dedication of love, and you really have to have that kind of dedication to it. And it's tough to try and find that partner both in law enforcement and LP. I think you're better. You have an easier time, I think, with the LP guys because it's what they live and breathe. They do the LP stuff. But finding those key law enforcement agencies, a big law enforcement PD or a sheriff's department or a DA's office that can come in and help facilitate meetings and lend a sense of consistency to it is, I think, important, because without that, it's a challenge to have these meetings consistently and keep things flowing regularly. So I would always advise that you have to have the right people involved and the dedication, certainly from the LP people and law enforcement.
All right, David, we'll get you out of here on this. What are the future goals and priorities of the San Diego Organized Retail Crime Alliance? What do you got in your crosshairs?
For us, I think we like to stay focused on what we're doing. We're continuing to have our monthly meetings with our Blitz activity every couple of months or every month. Our big annual conference has really been growing the last couple of years, and so we like having that because it's a great way to give back to the membership and give them an opportunity to receive training that they may not necessarily receive. Our membership is made up of anything from patrol guys to the detective working in an area station like I was, to specialized guys working property crimes, and the same thing for LP. We might get the guy working a store slot, in his first LP job, or you might have somebody who's a career LP person. So, we provide the training. We try to provide as much training and opportunity as we can within our organization. One of the things that we are looking at doing is maybe enhancing or maybe increasing the presence of orcas within the Southern California region, helping expand things into other counties like Orange County or Riverside. We've been helping them kind of build some orcas in their areas, and hopefully, it'll help to build a stronger base. San Diego's been kind of a keystone organization here for a long time, and if we can help kind of build and kind of expand out a bit more, without losing focus on obviously SD Orca and San Diego, then that's what we would love to do.
David, sincere thank you for your work fighting back against organized retail crime and for being with us today. We appreciate it.
I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, that's it for this episode of Retail's Most Wanted. Thanks to our presenting sponsors, LVT and the Attorney General Alliance. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button so you can catch each new episode. We drop a new one 3 times each month. We're also on X, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube. Links are in the show notes below, wherever you happen to have found us. To all of you, though, thanks for being with us, and keep up the good fight.